So this week in the Nepal art class, we're learning about Raphael, which is very another one of the very influential artists that we'll be covering over this course. So who is Raphael? Raphael Sanzio de Urbino is considered one of the greatest artists of all time, with enormous influence, along with Leonardo da Vinci and Michelangelo, who all actually lived in the same time period. Raphael dominated the Renaissance art era. He was both a painter and an architect and excelled in both aspects. So some background info on Raphael. He was an Italian artist during the Renaissance who was mainly known for his architecture and painting works. Some of the work he created is shown to the right of the text. He was born on that date in Urbino, Italy, and died on that date in Rome, Italy. His full name is Raffaello Sanzio de Urbino. And as you can see, in the works on the right, you can see how, I guess, detailed and advanced his art style was for ancient, or not quite ancient, but art from the Renaissance. So Raphael's early life. Raphael was born on March 28th, 1483 in Urbino, Italy. The city was famous for its patronage of the arts, and thus Raphael was able to nourish his natural talent. His father was called Giovanni Santi, and he was a court painter to the Duke of Urbino. On the right is a picture of Urbino, Italy.
With this type of environment, Raphael grew up interacting with high-class people in high social circles. But unfortunately, his father died when he was only 11, so he helped manage the art workshop that his father left behind for him. Even as a teen, he had tremendous artistic potential, and he was declared a master at only 17. So around this time, Raphael attracted the attention of prominent artist Pietro Perugino, and he employs Raphael as an apprentice. During this time, Raphael was able to hone his skills and develop his area of expertise. Perugino's influence on Raphael's painting is very evident, and this is Pietro Perugino. So these are some early works of Raphael. And in the first one, it's called The Marriage of the Virgin, and it was painted for the church Città di Castello. And you can see the use of perspective, which was something that was really common during the Renaissance because of its new discovery. And this other one is called Mon Crucifixion, and it was for Domenico Gavari as an altarpiece. And this style was really similar to Raphael's master, and it would often be mistaken for a piece done by Perugino. This one is called The Resurrection of Christ, and it was probably commissioned for part of the Bocconi altarpiece. So in his young adulthood, his apprenticeship ended after 4 years, and he set off on his own. He traveled to Florence in 1504 and moved around in northern Italy. His work during this time had a lot of Florentine influence, and during this period, as Raphael grew more and more famous, he met famous artists Da Vinci and Michelangelo. He was a lot younger than both Da Vinci and Michelangelo, but he was inspired by both artists who were in the same city as he was. And even though their relationships with each other were not very friendly and they were very competitive, traces of each other's influence can be seen in their artworks. An example of this is when Raphael experimented with his own version of Da Vinci's unique technique, sfumato.
So next we're going to talk about some of his famous works. So Raphael painted many depictions of Madonna and her child. So he focused on the relationship between the mother and the son and a lot of complex positioning in order to express this emotion. So right here on the right hand side, you could see two of the painting that he painted. The first one is called the Niccoloni Co-Power Madonna, and this showcased intimacy and complex positioning between the two, as you can see. The second one is called the Alba Madonna, which is another version of the two religious figures. So you could see that at the bottom. Whoops. So yeah, you could see a religious symbol at the bottom where the baby was holding a cross sign. Okay. Next are these two. These two are another two of his most famous works. The first one is called The Deposition of Christ. The second one is called Saint Michael Overwhelming the Demon, and you could see that these two are religious symbols. Next is adulthood. So in 1508, Raphael moves to Rome and he starts taking commissions from the church. And he was hired to paint the rooms, and someone named Pope Julius II wanted his artworks to overshadow the previous pope's contributions. And meanwhile, Michelangelo was hired for the Sistine Chapel. Raphael and Michelangelo being rivals, were fiercely competitive and they tried to outshine each other. So I guess there were like competitions of each other. Okay. And while Michelangelo painted the Sistine Chapel, Raphael painted a series of rooms known as the Raphael rooms. So there's four total rooms in total. There's four rooms in total that he painted, and they are considered to be the greatest of his works and include works like the School of Athens. Michelangelo and Raphael would constantly try to spy on each other, and Raphael even bribed a security guard to see what Michelangelo is painting. So they were constantly like, I don't know, competing against each other. Next is the one that we mentioned before, the School of Athens. So the School of Athens is another one of his most famous works. And Athens was actually an ancient city, which was a center for arts and science. And this depicts some of the most famous figures in history, including Michelangelo. And despite their rivals, he had great respect for him due to his artistic talent.
So the next one is the Parnassus, and it depicts the god Apollo and the Muses, all surrounded by famous poets and writers. Apollo, although he was mostly known as the god of the sun and healing, he was also known as like a patron of music, and he is shown here with an instrument in his hand as they play. And the muses were known as personification of the arts. So, for example, there would be a muse for tragedies and then a muse for comedies. And they would each be a representation of a specific type of art or writing. And all around them are famous figures in poetry and writing, both in ancient times and in Raphael's period of time. And one more is called The Disputation of the Holy Sacrament. And it depicts the three versions of God, or the old man here is God. The one in the middle is Jesus Christ. And the one on the bottom is the Holy Spirit. And all around them are various holy figures. For example, you can see that this is Virgin Mary, and this is John the Baptist. And there are also famous popes around here. You can see that this one's probably a pope with the hat. And they are all extremely influential religious figures painted all over this wall. Continuing with adulthood, even with the death of Pope Julius, the original commissioner of the Raphael rooms, he continued to paint the rooms, finishing with a total of 16 paintings, 4 paintings each room. There were many influences from Michelangelo's Sistine Chapel, even though Michelangelo and Raphael were not friendly at all, and they were constantly trying to outdo each other. They still respected each other's talent, and Raphael experimented with a lot of techniques that Michelangelo used in the Sistine Chapel. And the first 2 rooms of the Raphael rooms are considered to be the best, and that includes the School of Athens, which is the most famous out of all of these paintings. And they are considered, all of these paintings are considered to be the representatives of the greatest art in the High Renaissance, with all the people painted with perfect form and gestures, as well as complex motions. And continuing with adulthood, Raphael, he didn't necessarily stop painting, but he began to focus more on architecture. And in 1504, after the original architect was sick, fell ill, and then died, Raphael became the official architect of St. Peter's. Although his designs were not necessarily completed, and a lot of them were replaced over the years because each pope, once they rise to power, they always try to outdo the previous pope, replacing a lot of the old art there. He was still widely renowned for his architectural skills. And he was extremely skilled. So some examples of his architecture would be the Villa Madama here, and the Vatican Loggias, which is just a hallway, and you can see the art paintings over here and the columns and circular walls.
Raphael's last works. So Raphael died very unexpectedly as the age of 37. Unfortunately, the cause of death was unknown, but he managed to get all of his affairs in order before he passed. His funeral was very public and filled with people, as he had become so famous at the time already. And the Pope himself even attended, and his body was carried by 4 cardinals. Raphael left behind many works that had great potential, and he left behind a great legacy. Raphael's last work happened to be called the Transfiguration, and as he had unfortunately passed, his assistant finished it for him. So from the 1600s to 1900s, it was probably known as the most famous oil painting in the world, which kind of just is testament to his lasting legacy, which he still is very famous right now. So private life. Raphael, although engaged to a woman, was never married nor had any children, though he was suspected to have many affairs. He was very charming and knew how to thrive among the higher class, probably due to his upbringing, and he was close to many important members of the church, which can be seen as the Pope himself attended his funeral. Raphael had a death of unknown cause, but his painting style would be succeeded by his many students, and he left behind a great legacy. Although no one would be able to achieve his skill and fame, many were good artists on their own and preserved some of his painting style. After his death, art styles would shift to mannerism, which decreased Raphael's impact to the world. Instead, Michelangelo would later overtake him in fame.
All right, so that's all of the slides. Thank you for listening. We had a lot of fun making this, this lecture about one of the most famous artists of all time.
Thank you.